to the entertaining Talkin' Sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I am going to talk about the wide receiver prospect out of Liberty, Antonio Gandy-Golden. And I've thought about doing this series for a while. Some people have suggested names for it. And basically what I'm going to try to do is do a video a day or a video every other day, a semi-daily video on prospects that I think the New York Giants could target. And, you know, some suggestions have been Giants in the rough, diamonds in the rough. So any suggestions you guys have, put them in the comments below. But it's basically going to be for guys that are projected to go the second round or later, guys that I think that could fill some needs for the New York Giants. And then Antonio Gandy-Golden is definitely one of those prospects, and he's a guy that a lot of my subscribers have been talking about for quite some time. And the first subscriber that comes to mind is Steven Evans. And Mike Nixon as well. Both those guys have been talking about this guy for quite some time, and they are big fans, and he's certainly a guy that the New York Giants could target. I've seen the Giants mock to take him in a draft or two. So certainly a guy that could be on the radar, as the New York Giants do need a wide receiver. Of course, right now they kind of have a full slate with Golden Tate, Sterling Shepard, and of course last year's fifth-round draft pick there in Adarius Slayton. But, they could cut Tate after this year. I think he only carries a $4 or $5 million dead cap hit. And one thing that this team desperately needs is a tall threat, a guy that could go up and catch the jump ball, specifically in a Jason Garrett-led offense, which calls for a lot of vertical patterns and, works best when you have tall wide receivers. Sterling Shepard is under 6 feet tall. The same can be said for Golden Tate. Darius Slayton, 6'1", but Gandy-Golden checks in at 6'4". And when I watch this guy on tape, the guy he reminds me of is Plaxico Burress. And Burress didn't go to the biggest of schools either. And, of course, he was a huge threat for Eli Manning early on in his career. Went up and caught jump balls and definitely helped Eli Manning out before he learned to spread the ball around. But definitely could be a guy that Daniel Jones looks to hook up with deep down the field and could be a very good weapon for the New York Giants if they decide to take a Gandy-Golden. And in this video, I am going to get into where he's being mocked, where he's projected to go, and whether or not I think the New York Giants may, in fact, target him. But yeah, I thought he was an appropriate guy to start with, being that so many of my subscribers have talked about this guy, and I think it became even more probable that we could look into him after we brought on a Jason Garrett. He may not have fit the West Coast offense as well as he does this one. So let's take a quick look at Gandy-Golden. Let's jump into some of the things that people have had to say about him. What are his strengths? What are his weaknesses? And where were his beginnings? I didn't pull this up, but in high school, Gandy-Golden was not a highly regarded prospect. He, I believe, did not receive any offers from any big programs. Liberty is where he attended. I saw Mercer. I saw a couple of other smaller schools when it comes to football, and he ended up at Liberty. Was not even ranked nationally, from what I saw anyway, on Rivals.com. But, and some of the weaknesses, like I said, I'll get into. But let's start with let's start with some of the background, his statistics. At Liberty, played there for 4 years, from 2016 to 2019. For the last 3 years, he's had over 1,000 yards receiving and 29 touchdowns over his last 3 years combined. And, I mean, that's as consistent as it gets. He's averaged 70 catches, 69, 71, 70. This year, he caught more, for more yards, but right around that 10 touchdown mark for the last 3 years as well. So that's pretty damn consistent for Liberty. And some scouts have a lot of very nice things to say about him. And I wanted to show you guys what, in fact, they do have to say about him. I also want to show you guys where he's being mocked in a lot of these mock drafts. I went on several draft websites, and this is one that I pulled up. And, they showed 5 different mocks. And in their most recent mock, they had him going to San Francisco. I think this was drafttech.com, if I'm not mistaken, with the 31st overall pick. I've also seen him going as late as the 3rd round in some mocks. And a lot of this is going to be dependent on the combine, especially a player who went to a small school like a Gandy-Golden. His stock will either drop significantly if he has a poor combine, in my opinion, or it will rise. But he's definitely one of the more talented wide receivers in this draft class. And if the Giants were to take him, when you look, at what they have in terms of the draft, I think they would have to take him with the 37th overall selection, because I don't see him going to pick like 100. I mean, you look at all these mocks, he's going late first, early second. So if he's there at 37, this could very well be a guy that the New York Giants do target. Or maybe even they trade back up into the first round, the end of the first round. Would it be my first selection? I've been on record of saying that I want to attack the pass rush and offensive line with the first 2 picks. But if you fill in some needs via free agency, and maybe you feel like you could take a Gandy-Golden in the second round, may not be the worst decision in the world. Probably wouldn't be mine, but he's certainly an exciting prospect and a guy that I would at least understand fits a need for this offense and fits the scheme of this offense. But if the Giants are going to get him, I would think they would get him with the 37th overall pick. Next thing I'm going to pull up for you guys is I saw this guy mentioned several times. I think he's a talent evaluator, a scout, and this was just one of the tweets in the article that I wanted to pull up for you guys. Meet the wide receiver you should know but don't know. Antonio Gandy-Golden, a monster, 6'4" frame and a catch point monster. He is even subtly nuanced route runner. Here a little inside break to sell the slant and then cuts hard to the corner of the fade, body control too. And that's all I've heard about. From all these articles that I've read about him, he's got great body control and he's great at going up and catching the 50-50 ball. And that's why he reminds me so much of a Plaxico Burress. How many times did Eli Manning just chuck it up? Right, early on in his career, you go back, you look at that Eagles game, even the Super Bowl catch. Not that he chucked it up, Burress was open, but Burress was so good at going up and catching those 50-50 balls, and I think that is the element that he would bring to the New York Giants or whoever will draft Antonio Gandy-Golden. These are some of his strengths. Gandy-Golden's biggest strength lies in his ability to stretch the field by winning in contested catch situations. He has plenty of highlight-worthy plays throughout his career at Liberty. Each year, he has shown growth in every area of the position. He has very reliable hands that Liberty has utilized not only in the red zone, but in many third down situations to convert. And this goes on to say some more positive things about him. The Flames, obviously the team name of Liberty. The Flames have benefited from the catch radius he has. AGG, Antonio Gandy-Golden, didn't always receive the best balls thrown his way, but his insane catch radius gave Liberty a chance every time the ball went his way. In short to intermediate routes, he does a great job of securing the ball and becoming a relentless ball carrier and is a threat to break away with his tackle-breaking ability. As a blocker, his long and strong frame supports his constant motor in what makes him a great blocker on the perimeter. So a lot of really positive things that were said about him here. I wanted to pull up some of the weaknesses of his game because like every prospect, there are strengths and there are some weaknesses, and some of the weaknesses of Antonio Gandy-Golden are just this. Gandy-Golden isn't an elite athlete, which goes back to my point about the combine. I don't expect this guy to run a jaw-dropping 40 time, but his strength is going to be his height and his ability to go up and catch 50-50 balls. He doesn't have game-breaking speed or a crisp and vast route tree, much like we heard about, not really the fast part, but the route tree we heard about Darius Slayton, which is why he dropped to where he did, and he had an underwhelming year at Auburn. He has developed into a more nuanced route runner with his time with Coach Hugh Freeze, but he still has much to learn to be smooth enough route runner to mitigate his athleticism concern. When against press coverage, he can oftentimes get veered off his line and limits his ability to separate against physical and more technically sound corners. While he is a great blocker when engaged with a defender, there are times of momentary mental lapses downfield when trying to find the next man to block. He wasn't much of a threat over the middle of the field, while with the Flames, improved release and route running is going to be required for him to have a more well-rounded game that will translate better into the NFL. So those are some of his knocks. And then finally, this is one more knock I wanted to bring up for you guys, is competition. But yeah, some of his knocks are his route running ability. He's not the best athlete. And he's not going to create a ton of separation. Some of the things that New York Giants receivers have struggled with on the current roster, they don't really have a guy that creates a lot of separation outside of possibly a Darius Slayton if he can improve his route running ability. But yeah, he's going to be a great target in the red zone and a guy that could go up and catch a lot of 50-50 balls. Speaking of concerns, Gandy-Golden's competition is sure to spark up plenty of debate amongst evaluators. Even though Liberty moved to the FBS this past season, which is D1, Gandy-Golden has largely played weak competition, and it's hard to get an accurate gauge on him as a result. In his two toughest matchups last year, Virginia and Auburn, the receiver was almost completely wiped from the box score, going 2 for 38 and 3 for 22 with no touchdowns in either contest. Now, there were plenty of reps he won in both those games that don't show up in the stats, but the concerns are real. So there you go. Those are some of the concerns, and those are some of the strengths of an Antonio Gandy-Golden. People point to the route running has to get better. He doesn't have the most, the best speed, and he hasn't gone up against the best competition. However, you can't teach height. He's 6'4". He's great at going up and catching 50-50 balls when you look at the film, you look at the highlights, and would certainly present a target for Daniel Jones in the red zone, and for deep balls down the field from the 50-yard line, which is what this offense requires. I go back to my Jason Garrett video. The Cowboys offense worked best when you had two tall wide receivers on the outside in a Miles Austin and a Des Bryant. And that is what he would bring to the New York Giants if they did indeed draft him. I don't think you're getting him, though, if you don't take him at 37 overall. And the only way I'd be in favor of that is if you addressed both needs, big time in free agency and the first round of the draft. Otherwise, I think that there are more positions of importance where I would like to, spend that 37th overall pick. But, I'm not going to be crying on draft night if we take this kid. It's certainly something we could use for the future, especially if you plan to move on from Golden Tate after this season and you can play Shepard in the slot, or if Shepard decides to retire with all the injury concerns he's had. So, Gandy-Golden, certainly a prospect to keep an eye on, a guy I wanted to do a video on, and thank you guys for watching. As always, guys, if you like what you watch, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.